Hello, JRF2K. Hello, Josh. Good to see you. Hello, Laura, who's with us on Zoom. We'll get started in a couple minutes, giving some time for people to come in. How am I coming in audio, visually? Can you see me? Can you hear me? All good? Not good? We'll give it another minute or two and we'll get started. All right, I think we can get started. I'll get started as usual with a little bit of chanting. Share screen. All right. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Mano pubangama dhamma manosetta manomaya manasa che paduttena basati va karoti va tato nang dukam anveti chakkang va vahato padang mano pubangama dhamma manosetta manomaya manasa che pasanena basati va karoti va tato nang sukam anveti chaya va anapayani Anicca vata sankara upada vayadamino upajitva nirujjanti te sangu pusumo sukho sabba papassa akaranang kusalassa upasampada satchitta pariyodapanang etang buddhanasasanang kanti paramang tapotittika nibbanang paramang vadanti buddha Nahi pabbhajato parubhagati samanohoti parang viheta yanto anupavado anupagato patimoka me cha sangvaro matanyuta cha batasming pantancha sayanasanang arichate cha yogo etang buddhanasasanang. All right, English. All actions are led by the mind. Mind is their master, mind is their maker. Actors speak with a defiled state of mind, and suffering follows, as the cartwheel follows the foot of the ox. All actions are led by the mind. Mind is their master, mind is their maker. Actors speak with a pure state of mind, then happiness follows, as your shadow follows you without departing. Impermanent are all conditioned things, affected by rising and falling array. Having arisen, they then must cease. Blissful is it when they subside. Abstaining from all evil, doing what is good, cleansing one's mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. Patience is the highest practice. Nibbana is supreme, say the Buddhas. A mendicant does not harm others, directly suppresses no one. Not insulting, not harming, restrained according to the moral code, moderating in food, dwelling in solitude, engaging in higher mental development. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. Sa. All right, friends. Well, it is Tuesday, and it's time for the joint Magaseka and Charlotte Buddhist Vihara session, the very final one, because next Monday, both Aya and I will be taking flights. I'll be taking a flight from North Carolina to New Jersey, and she'll be taking a flight from Germany. So she'll be, but next Monday, we're switching. So Dhammapalooza will be returning to its normal time, Monday nights, 8 a.m., although probably not next week, since I'll be flying and, settling in and all that stuff. We'll see. It's possible, but most likely not. So for today, as we do our Dhammapalooza, we will, as always, choose to figure out what. Wow, Dhammapalooza is a community guided and community based event, which means that you all have a say in how Dhammapalooza goes. Dhammapalooza can be a variety of different activities. We just did some chanting. We'll do some meditation later. We could do Q&A, Dhamma talks, sutta readings, etc. So we'll see how it goes. Each Dhammapalooza is different in this way, and it flows differently. So for the next couple minutes, if you have any questions you'd like me to answer, if you have any topics you'd like me to discuss or give a Dhamma talk about, if you have anything you'd like the community to discuss, this is something that we can do. We have an hour and a half here together tonight where we can do these variety of different Dhamma-related activities. Hello, Gregory. Welcome. JRF2K says, I've been going through the Middle Link discourses. I found a sutta that has become an instant favorite. the Saleka Sutta. That's on self-effacement, very famous sutta. It's all kinds of wonderful. Yeah, very good. I'll give it some time in the chat. I'm enjoying my final days of being in seclusion here by myself for the most part. And I did do some events, and I'll be doing another event in person, and like a half-day thing here in Charlotte on Saturday at this Great Woods place, I think it's called. But mostly I've just been by myself, and so I've needed and enjoyed this nice month and a week long break, and then it's back to being around people, or being more around people, I should say. Just checking the chat. Also, welcome Anthony in the Zoom. You can use the video if you want, Anthony, or not. It's up to you. So it's and we have, what do we have? All right. So if there's any questions, comments, etc. If not, I have a sutta lined up, and it's not Saleka Sutta. Maybe we'll read that in the next couple weeks. We'll see. I think we read it. Maybe it was a couple months ago already, but we did read it on here a while back. All right. Let's share screen and do some sutta reading. We're going to read a very famous sutta today. Majjhima Nikaya number 44. Hello, Yankee. Welcome. JRF2K. So JRF has a question, and I can answer this before we get started. Hello, Metika. Welcome. JRF's question is, how do you love something without being attached? You don't. There's no such thing as love without attachment. Got a new kitten, and he's great, but I keep thinking he will pass as all things, and it gets me a little sad. Yeah, he will. It could be at any time too. Most likely that you'll watch this little baby kitten grow into a larger kitten, but this is a good reflection to reflect on. Everybody and everything you know will grow old, will pass on, will die. But there's no such thing as love without attachment. There's no such thing as holding something dear without attachment. This is impossible. I know in the Mahayana because I've come across this question a bunch, like on Buddhist forums and things like that. It's like, how can I be married and let go of all attachments? And I'm like, you can't. In the Mahayana, maybe you have some different levels of that, but in the early texts and the suttas, no such thing. You just accept that you have this attachment. It is what it is. All right. Let us read the sutta. The shorter classification. So in this sutta here, the layman Visakha as a, not to be understood, not to be confused with the very, very famous disciple of the Buddha, Visakha. This is Visakha. Visakha went to see his ex-wife, who's a bhikkhuni, the bhikkhuni Dhammadina, bowed and sat down to one side and said to her, "Ma'am, they speak of this thing called identity. What is this identity that the Buddha spoke of?" Visakha, the Buddha said that these 5 grasping aggregates are identity. This is another place where this is said. Maybe you've heard me talk about how the Buddha ties in identity with suffering, and but I've never thought of this sutta when I think of this. There's a little like either in the Samyutta or the Anguttara, there's a little sutta where this is asked of Sariputta, I think. But this is, you can see this. Identity equals suffering, because we have created this identity. And therefore we have created our suffering. Visakha, the Buddha said these 5 grasping aggregates are identity. That is, form, feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness. The Buddha said that these 5 grasping aggregates are identity. Saying, "Good, ma'am." Visakha approved and agreed with what Dhammadina said. Then he asked another question. And so you see here, this is one of the few places in the suttas where you see a bhikkhuni kind of like in a senior teacher role of a layperson. You see here, people ask, well, why do people use Aya or Aya for bhikkhunis? You see here in the sutta, Sadaye means very good lady or ma'am. So Aya, well, again, just like Visakha and Visakha, there's Aya and Aya. So Aya is masculine, Aya is feminine. Basically, that's the Pali version of Lord and Lady. When I first heard that, I was like, I don't mind being called Aya. That would be kind of cool. Lord Jayasara. I like Bhante better. And that is what the Buddha set down for us in the Parinibbana Sutta. So Bhante is much better. But anyway, it just appeals to the old medieval fantasy nerd in me. So going back to the sutta. Ma'am, they speak of this thing called the origin of identity. What is the origin of identity that the Buddha spoke of? It's the craving that leads to future lives, mixed up with relishing in greed, chasing pleasure in various realms. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for continued existence, and craving to end existence. The Buddha said that this is the origin of identity. Man, they speak of this thing called the cessation of identity. What is the cessation of identity that the Buddha spoke of? It's the fading away and cessation of that very same craving with nothing left over, giving it away, letting it go, releasing it, and not clinging to it. The Buddha said that this is the cessation of identity. Man, they speak of the practice that leads to the cessation of identity. What is the practice that leads to the cessation of identity that the Buddha spoke of? The practice that leads to the cessation of identity that the Buddha spoke of is simply this Noble Eightfold Path. That is, right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right immersion. But ma'am, is that grasping the same thing as the 5 grasping aggregates? Or is grasping one thing and the 5 aggregates another. That grasping is not the exact same thing as the 5 grasping aggregates, nor is grasping one thing and the 5 grasping aggregates another. The desire and greed for the grasping aggregates is the grasping there. But ma'am, how does identity view come about? It's when an unlearned, ordinary person has not seen the noble ones and is neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of the noble ones. They've not seen good persons and are neither, excuse me. I'm going to take a drink. All right. They've not seen good persons and are neither skilled nor trained in the teaching of good persons. They regard form as self, or self as having form, or form in self, or self in form. They regard feeling, perception, choices, consciousness as self, self as having consciousness, consciousness in self, or self in consciousness. That's how identity view comes about. But ma'am, how does identity view not come about? It's when a learned noble disciple has seen the noble ones and is skilled and trained in the teaching of the noble ones. They've seen good persons and are skilled and trained in the teaching of good persons. They don't regard form as self, self as having form, form in self, or self in form. They don't regard feeling, perception, choices, consciousness as self, self as having consciousness, consciousness in self, or self in consciousness. That's how identity view does not come about. But ma'am, what is the Noble Eightfold Path? It is simply this Noble Eightfold Path, that is, right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right immersion. But ma'am, is the Noble Eightfold Path conditioned or unconditioned? The Noble Eightfold Path is conditioned. If it weren't conditioned, you couldn't follow it and develop it. Right? Are the 3 practice categories included in the Noble Eightfold Path? Or is the Noble Eightfold Path included in the 3 practice categories? And here is the most famous, the main area where we get the threefold division of the path from this sutta. That is Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. So the 3 practice categories are not included in the Noble Eightfold Path. Rather, the Noble Eightfold Path is included in the 3 practice categories. Right speech, right action, and right livelihood. These things are included in the category of Sila. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right immersion. These things are included in the category of Samadhi. Right view, right and right thought. These things are included in the category of Panya, wisdom. But ma'am, what is immersion? What things are the foundation for immersion? What things are the prerequisite for immersion? What is the development of immersion? Again, the Pali word here is samadhi. Unification of mind is immersion. The 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation are the foundations of immersion. This is, again, one of those things that is not really taught, but you see it in multiple places where the Buddha is placing satipatthana as the basis for deep samadhi. Here is one of them. Satipatthana is the foundation for samadhi. Of course, this makes sense from the Noble Eightfold Path, right? The eighth factor is Samma Samadhi. And the Buddha says that this is Samma Samadhi is supported by the other 7 factors of the path. So foundations of mindfulness. And another, I mean, it's literally a paragraph long, might be in the Anguttara Nikaya. I don't know off the top of my head, but the Buddha says essentially, if you wish to abandon the 5 hindrances, practice Satipatthana. So we see quite clearly, if you want to get into deep states of meditation, Satipatthana is what you do. And this is something that I have experienced in my own experience as somebody who had trouble breathing and ended up starting to get into deep states of meditation because I was practicing Satipatthana. I wasn't even trying to get into I wasn't even trying mindfulness of breathing, but practicing Satipatthana showed me that I could do it. So never underestimate the importance of Satipatthana. As you can see in the suttas, really, you should learn, if somebody comes to Buddhism, brand new to Buddhism, they should learn Satipatthana before they learn mindfulness of breathing. They really should. But I mean, mindfulness of breathing is part of Satipatthana too. But Satipatthana, I think those should go first. But anyway, continuing on. The 4 right efforts are the prerequisites for immersions. The cultivation, development, and making much of these very same things is the development of immersion. How many processes are there? I'm just gonna, because I'm interested to see what, oh, you can see my screen. You can see the golden dictor. No, you probably can't, can you? Anyway, because I'm only sharing let me look here. Oh, it doesn't, oh, okay. I was just having an interesting, how many processes? So how many sankhara? All right, that's interesting. Okay, there are these 3 processes: physical, verbal, and mental processes. Oh, okay, so we've gone past the Noble Eightfold Path here. But ma'am, what are the physical processes? What are the verbal processes? And what is the mental processes? Breathing is a physical process. Placing the mind and keeping it connected are verbal processes. Perception and feeling are mental processes. So you see here, breathing is a physical process. So anapanasati. Again, the Buddha does say that the breath is a body among the bodies. So the breath is thoroughly stationed with the body. Vitakka vichara, placing the mind and keeping it connected, as we see from the first jhana framework. This is interesting. It's a verbal process. So like this is thinking, right? Placing the mind and keeping it connected, a verbal process. And perception and feeling are mental processes. But ma'am, why is breathing a physical process? Why are placing the mind and keeping it connected a verbal process? Why are perception and feeling mental processes? Breathing is physical. It's tied up with the body. That's why breathing is a physical process. First, you place the mind and keep it connected. Then you break into speech. That's why placing the mind and keeping it connected are verbal processes. Perception and feeling are mental. They're tied up with the mind. That's why perception and feeling are mental processes. But ma'am, how does someone attain the cessation of perception and feeling? A mendicant who is entering such an attainment does not think, I will enter the cessation of perception and feeling, or I am entering the cessation of perception or feeling, or I have entered the cessation of perception and feeling. Rather, their mind has been previously developed as to lead to such a state. So this is a very clear, this is not one of the states, and this can be confusing, right? This is not one of what we call the arupa attainments, the formless attainments. Sometimes people call them jhanas, but that they're not jhanas. And the framework of those is that you aware that space is infinite, aware that nothingness is whatever. Here, it's not. This is they're saying here. This has nothing to do with okay, the mind is now perception and feeling. No, this is something that is developed. As a matter of fact, it's something that only arahants have. This is something. This is a special state for only awakened beings. This is why the Bhikkhuni Visakha says that it must be developed. Rather, the mind has been previously developed, does this lead to such a state? But ma'am, which cease first for a mendicant who is entering the cessation of perception and feeling, physical, verbal, or mental processes. Verbal processes cease first, then physical, then mental. But ma'am, how does someone emerge from the cessation of perception and feeling? A mendicant who is emerging from such an attainment does not think, I will emerge from the cessation of perception and feeling. I am emerging from the cessation of perception and feeling, or I have emerged from the cessation of perception and feeling. Rather, their mind has been previously developed so as to lead to such a state. But ma'am, which arises first for the mendicant who is emerging from the cessation of perception and feeling, physical, verbal, or mental processes. Mental processes arise first, then physical, then verbal. But ma'am, when a mendicant has emerged from the attainment of cessation of perception and feeling, how many kinds of contact do they experience? They experience 3 kinds of contact: emptiness, signless, and undirected contacts. But ma'am, when a mendicant has emerged from the attainment of cessation and perception and feeling, what does their mind slant, slope, and incline to? Their mind slants, slopes, and inclines to seclusion. But ma'am, how many feelings are there? There are 3 feelings: painful, pleasant, and neutral feeling. And so, as I like to say, neutral is a very common way of translating this. I feel like it's missing something though. And I guess to make it the most easy English common parlance, neutral is probably best. But we see here, sukha vedana, dukkha vedana, adukkam, asukha, right? So when we put the A in front of something, or an, if has a vowel in front as the first word, this is a negation of it. So sukha, pleasant; dukkha, pain, painful; and not painful, not pleasant. I think there's a bit more to that than just neutral. I don't know if I'm the best at verbalizing it. I think it's something that's still kind of forming in my mind. But in many ways, I feel it's probably better to just go with not pleasant, not painful, even though it's a bit more clunky. What are these 3 feelings? Anything felt physically or mentally as pleasant or enjoyable, this is pleasant feeling. Anything felt physically or mentally as painful or unpleasant, this is painful feeling. Anything felt physically or mentally as neither pleasurable nor painful, this is neutral feeling. And here we have this is spelled out. That's good. Neither pleasurable nor painful. What is pleasant and what is painful in each of the 3 feelings? Pleasant feeling is pleasant when it remains and painful when it perishes, right? So it's a pleasant feeling. We want to hold on to it, cling to it. As long as we have it, we're enjoying it, we like it. As soon as it goes away, it is painful. Hello, Dharma learner. Welcome. No, I probably won't be to Empty Cloud Monastery for probably a year. These days I go there for like once a year for a month or two. I might do a very short visit during the Vasa, just like a couple of days or a week, but most likely not. So yeah. All right. See something in the chat. Anthony is just agreeing and explaining while he views the same thing. All right. I agree with neither painful nor pleasant point you are making. Easier to categorize a sensation as that, as opposed to neutral. Easier to understand the ambiguity and subtlety of these kinds of sensations. Now, I don't know. Okay, okay. The point I was going to make, which you find in Salla Sutta, similarly the arrow, looks like we're going to have this under this point being made here too. So let's continue on. Pleasant feeling is pleasant when it remains painful. It remains and painful when it perishes. Painful feeling is opposite. Painful feeling is painful when it remains and pleasant when it perishes. Ah, that pain is gone. Neutral feeling is pleasant when there is knowledge, painful when there is ignorance. What underlying tendencies underlie each of these three feelings? This is anusaya. This is a very important word here. Let's see what it says. Disposition, tendency, propensity. I call this as underlying habitual tendencies. So these are deep habits. This is not just from this life. This is just, underlying tendencies, underlying habitual tendencies, habits that we have as beings in the samsaric state. The underlying tendency for greed underlies a pleasant feeling. So, as I said, we feel pleasant feeling, we want it, we cling to it, we like it, we want more of it. Greed. The underlying tendency to aversion underlies painful feeling. So again, we don't like it, we want to run away from it, push it away, kill it, avoid it, ignore it, whatever. The underlying tendency for ignorance underlies neutral feeling. So this is an interesting one. The underlying tendency for neutral feeling is ignorance. Why? Because most of the time we're actually not paying it. We have no awareness of a neutral feeling. This is why meditation practice is usually like mindfulness of breathing. What do you think the breath is? It's a neutral feeling. Unless you have like asthma and breathing issues like myself and things like that, or something, you're unable to breathe. Most of the time you're not paying attention to your breath. It's just doing its thing, going on. Only if your breath stops or you're having a ragged breath or something to that effect, then you notice it. Same thing for walking meditation. Do we pay attention to our feet? Not really, unless there's a painful or pleasant experience while we're walking. We're not paying attention. Our feet is walking. Our feet are taking, hundreds or thousands of steps a day. Not paying attention to that. When you do mindfulness, when you practice walking meditation, you pay attention to it. So you are going against the underlying tendency of ignorance by paying attention to neutral feeling. What underlying tendencies underlie each of the three feelings? The underlying tendency for greed underlies pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency for repulsion underlies painful feeling. The underlying tendency for ignorance underlies neutral feeling. Do these underlying tendencies always underlie these feelings? No, they do not. What should be given up in regard to each of these feelings? The underlying tendency to greed should be given up when it comes to pleasant feeling. The underlying tendency to repulsion should be given up when it comes to painful feelings. And the underlying tendency to ignorance should be given up when it comes to neutral feelings. Should the underlying tendencies be given up regarding all instances of these feelings? No, not in all instances. Take a mendicant who is quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unskillful qualities. This is the jhana formulation now. Enters and remains in the first jhana, which has the rapture and bliss born of seclusion, while placing the mind and keeping it connected. With this, they give up greed, and the underlying tendency to greed does not lie within that. And take a mendicant who reflects, oh, when will I enter and remain in the same dimension that the noble ones enter and remain in today? Nursing such a longing for supreme liberations gives rise to sadness due to longing. With this, they give up repulsion, and the underlying tendency to repulsion does not lie within that. Take a mendicant who, giving up the pleasure and pain and entering former happiness and sadness, enters and remains in the fourth jhana, without pleasure or pain, with pure equanimity and mindfulness. With this, they give up ignorance, and the underlying tendency to ignorance does not lie within that. But ma'am, what is the counterpart of pleasant feeling? Painful feeling. What is the counterpart of painful feeling? Pleasant feeling. What is the counterpart of neutral feeling? Ignorance. What is the counterpart of not ignorance? Knowledge. What is the counterpart of knowledge? Freedom. What is the counterpart of freedom? Extinguishment. What is the counterpart of extinguishment? Your question goes too far, Visakha. You couldn't figure out the limit of questions. For extinguishment is the culmination, destination, and the end of the spiritual life. If you wish, go to the Buddha and ask him this question. You should remember it in line with his answer. And then the layman Visakha approved and agreed with what the nun Dhammadinna said. He went up from his seat, bowed, and respectfully circled her, keeping her on his right. And then he went up to the Buddha, bowed, and sat down to one side, and informed the Buddha of all they had discussed. When he had spoken, the Buddha said to him, the nun Dhammadinna is astute, Visakha. She has great wisdom. If you came to me and asked me this question, I would answer it exactly the same way as the nun Dhammadinna. That is what it means, and that is how you should remember it. That is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, the layman Visakha was happy with what the Buddha said. All right. Any comments, questions, clarifications regarding this sutta? Since we do have about a 16-second delay here on the YouTube end, I'll always give it a little bit more time. If we don't have any comments or questions, maybe in a minute or two, we'll do our meditation. All right, so why don't we do our meditation, and then afterwards we'll read some Dhammapada verses and probably call it a night. So begin by setting up your body in a comfortable and stable position, whatever position works for you. We'll start, as always, by scanning through the body. Starting from the feet, moving up to the head. Place your focus and attention on your feet. By doing this, I mean to pay attention and focus in on any sensation or feeling that arises in that part of the body, such as the feeling of the feet pressing against the floor, the cushion, etc. Move up through the ankles into the calves. Up through the knees and into the thighs. Up through to the hips and pelvis, paying close attention to how the position of the pelvis impacts both the position of the legs and the spine above it. Move up the spine through the abdomen and the chest. Checking that the spine is not leaning or slouching here or there, or that you are trying to make the spine really straight. Try to do your best to allow the spine to sit comfortably in its normal curvature. Up through the shoulders, making sure they're hanging loosely, not scrunched up and tight. And then down to the elbows and hands, observing how their position also impacts your posture, especially the spine. And finally, up to the head, making sure that the head is hanging loosely, not scrunched up, and the head is not leaning or slouching here or there. Chin parallel to the floor. When you're done setting up your body in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, try not to manipulate or control the breath in any way. Your body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply observe, investigate, and abide with the breath as the body breathes in and the body breathes out. Whenever you're distracted away, remember to acknowledge, come back to full awareness and focus. Practice letting go of the distraction and then returning to the breath. Knowledge, let go, and return over and over. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Every once in a while, as you're following your breath, check in with the state of your mind. As your mind becomes more calm and tranquil, try to observe the more subtle, deeper characteristics of the breath. Sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. Do your best to follow the changing nature of the breath. Slowly open your eyes, becoming aware of the room around you, reflecting on the state of your mind before the meditation and now, and contemplating any experiences you may have had. Let's do some Dhammapada verses, and we'll call it a night or a morning, depending on where you're at. Hello, Rick. Hope you're doing well. All right, miscellaneous. If by renouncing a lesser happiness, one may realize a greater happiness, let the wise man renounce the lesser, having regard for the greater. Entangled by the bonds of hate, he who seeks his own happiness by inflicting pain on others is never delivered from hatred. This is covered under things like revenge, and vigilante justice, these kind of things. You seek your own happiness by inflicting pain on others. One is never delivered from hatred. The cankers only increase for those who are arrogant and heedless, who leave undone what should be done and do what should not be done. The cankers cease for those mindful and clearly comprehending. Ones who always earnestly practice mindfulness of the body, who do not resort to what should not be done and steadfastly pursue what should be done. Having slain mother, craving, having slain father, self-conceit, two warrior kings, eternalism and nihilism, and destroyed a country, sense organs and sense objects, together with its treasurer, attachment and lust, ungrieving goes the holy man. Having slain mother, father, two Brahmins, two extreme views, and a tiger as the fifth, the five mental hindrances, ungrieving goes the holy man. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily who day and night constantly practice the recollections of the qualities of the Buddha. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily who day and night constantly practice the recollection of the qualities of the Dhamma. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily who day and night constantly practice the recollection of the qualities of the Sangha. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily who day and night constantly practice mindfulness of the body. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily whose minds by day and night delight in the practice of nonviolence. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily whose minds by day and night delight in the practice of meditation. Difficult is the life of a monk. Difficult is it to delight therein. Also difficult and sorrowful is the household life. Suffering comes from association with unequals. Suffering comes from wandering in samsara. Therefore, do not be aimless, wanderer. Be not a pursuer of suffering. He who is full of faith and virtue and possesses good repute and wealth, he is respected everywhere, in whatever land he travels. The good shine from afar, like the Himalaya mountains, but the wicked are unseen, like arrows shot in the night. He who sits alone, sleeps alone, and walks alone, who is strenuous and subdues himself alone, will find delight in the solitude of the forests. All right, next section, hell. The liar goes to the state of woe. Also he who, having done wrong, says, I did not do it. Men of base actions both. On departing, they share the same destiny in the other world. There are many evil characters and uncontrolled men wearing the saffron robe, the monk's robe. These wicked men will be born in states of woe because of their evil deeds. It would be better to swallow a red-hot iron ball blazing like fire than as an immoral and uncontrolled monk eat the alms food of other people, of the people. 4 misfortunes befall the reckless man who consorts with another's wife: acquisition of demerit, disturbed sleep, ill repute, and rebirth in states of woe. Such a man acquires demerit and an unhappy birth in the future. Brief is the pleasure of the frightened man and woman, and the king imposes heavy punishment. Hence, let no man consort with another's wife. Just as kusa grass wrongly handled cuts the hands, even so a recluse life, wrongly lived, drags one to states of woe. Any loose act, any corrupt observance, any life of questionable celibacy, none of these bear much fruit. If anything is to be done, let one do it with sustained vigor. A lax monastic life stirs up the dust of passion all the more. An evil deed is better left undone, for such a deed torments one afterwards. But a good deed is better done, doing which one repents not later. Just as a border city is closely guarded both within and without, even so guard yourself. Do not let slip this opportunity for spiritual growth. For those who let slip this opportunity grieve indeed when consigned to hell. Those who are ashamed of what they should not be ashamed of, and who are not ashamed of what they should be ashamed of, upholding false views, they go to states of woe. Those who see something to fear where there is nothing to fear, and see nothing to fear where there is something to fear, upholding false views, they go to states of woe. Those who imagine evil where there is none, and who do not see evil where there is, upholding false views, they go to states of woe. Those who discern the wrong as wrong and the right as right, upholding right views, they go to the realms of bliss. All right. Let's do our sharing of merits and we'll call it a night. Final North Carolina Dhammapalooza. Dukkha patta chani dukkha, bhaya patta chani bhaya, soka patta chani soka, hontu sabbe pipaniyo, eta vata cha mehi sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasata jabumata deva naga mahiddhika punyantang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit of ours that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends. Well, we'll call this one a night. Sukhi Hotu, may you be well and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again. Good night, everybody.